That's wrong. That's not fair. You can't say that. You shouldn't do that. When we make such statements, we are not simply giving our opinion or expressing our preferences. We are really stating that there is a right or a wrong, and we're firmly convicted about what that is and convinced of it. Where did that sense of right and wrong come from? You know, those who don't believe in God believe in a natural evolutionary process in which the survival of the fittest takes place, and where there's real competition and one creature tries to outdo another or conquer another. Red in tooth and claw is the way nature has been described. That is to say, the victor has teeth and claws stained with the blood of the victim. And so if all of life is a result of a natural evolutionary process, then one could argue that we human beings, who are certainly at a peak of that evolutionary process, that we of all creatures should have fine-tuned this art of beating out the other person. But in fact, we really are altruistic many times. We do sacrifice, in fact, sometimes sacrificing our own lives for the lives of others. Where does this come from, this idea of being good? For we find it to be wrong to put down somebody else, to beat out somebody else, to take advantage of the weak, those who can't take care of themselves. We find it an expression of goodness and morality to take care of the weak and the vulnerable. Where did this idea come from? Now, admittedly, atheists can be very moral people. Most of them are, but their morality is firmly planted in thin air. Because you have to have a source of ultimate good if you're going to declare something as good or something as not good. Where does that standard come from? Those of us who believe in God believe that God is that somebody, that source of what we know is to be good, and that then in contrast to that which is to be evil. C.S.Lewis, referring to the somebody behind all that exists, wrote, "We have two bits of evidence about the somebody. One is the universe he has made. The other bit of evidence is that moral law which he has put into our minds. And this is a better bit of evidence than the other because it is inside information. You find out more about God from the moral law than from the universe in general, just as you find out more about a man by listening to his conversation than by looking at a house he has built." Scientist Francis Collins quoted the philosopher Immanuel Kant. "Two things fill me with constantly increasing admiration and awe, the longer and more earnestly I reflect on them: the starry heavens without, and the moral law within." There can be really only one logical source for an ultimate source of morality, and that is an ultimate moral creator and giver, a moral law maker, and that, of course, would have to be God. C.S. Lewis wrote, "The being behind the universe is intensely interested in right conduct." And it is interesting that God, as he's described in the Bible, is a God of goodness. Moses, it's recorded, when he asked God to reveal himself and his holiness, God responded by saying, "I will cause all my goodness to pass in front of you." And so when Moses asked for God to reveal himself, God chose to reveal his goodness of all of his different characteristics. The psalmist David declared in Psalm 145, verse 7, that all generations, quote, "celebrate your abundant goodness." It's not that God measures up to some high standard of goodness, because then you'd be back to square one. Where does that standard come from? No, it's the fact that God is ultimately good, and all goodness is measured by him. Again, the Bible shares that when Solomon's temple was dedicated, the singers declared, "He is good, his love endures forever." 2 Chronicles 5:13. And again, another psalmist declared in Psalm 106, verse 1, "Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. His love endures forever. You know, we humans have an innate sense of goodness. We demand goodness and righteousness and justice. Where did this come from? The most logical explanation is that it has come from the ultimate lawgiver, the ultimate one who is good. It's the only foundation you can have that is indisputable for goodness, and that would be God. If you don't believe in a God, then why try to be good at all? Now, it's been argued that society, we are encouraged to be good for the good of society's sake. But is that really logical? A billion years from now, if there's no God, humankind won't exist, won't be remembered. So why not, during your short time here on earth and mine, that we shouldn't grab all the gusto we can, doing selfishly whatever we want to do, no matter how it affects other people, because we just have this short time to exist. Now, morality and goodness really falls back on the whole concept of a good and loving God. Scientist Francis Collins, I want to quote him again, referred to C.S.Lewis in a speech, and he stated, "Lewis asked if you were looking for evidence of a God who was not just a mathematician and a physicist, but who cared about human beings and who stood for what is good and holy and wanted his people to also stand for those things, wouldn't it be interesting to find written in your own heart this moral law which is calling you to do just that?" If we humans are simply the result of a natural evolutionary process, then where did our sense of morality, of right and wrong, come from? It is quite logical to believe that it has come from the one who has made us, our Creator God, who is good to the umpteenth degree, and by whom we measure all goodness.